Howdy, howdy, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening for the special viewing of the documentary The Pursuit. I want to thank you all for tuning in here. Make sure to do the right thing, hit the like button, comment, hit share, start watch parties. I'm very excited to be sharing this film with you. I just appreciate you for joining us and carving out some time this evening. So tune in and make sure all your friends watch as well. I want to just real quickly, I just want to give a quick campaign update here. Our money bomb. Thank you so much, everybody, for helping. I'm frankly embarrassed and honored for all the support that we've gotten over the past about 36 hours. We've raised over $7,000 as a grassroots campaign. I'm just ecstatic about that. And we have hit 65,000 total in fundraising, which is more than triple the incumbent. So this campaign isn't what it is without you, and I just really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, everybody. But without further ado, I just want to introduce the man of the hour. I had the pleasure of learning about this film and meeting John and discovering that he's quite an awesome guy down at Roanoke Festival in Ocean Shore. So, John, I appreciate you joining us here tonight.
Oh, Anthony, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for sharing our movie with more folks. It's meant to be seen, so it warms my heart every time new people can get a chance to see it.
You know, I'm excited to for politics to enter a different medium than maybe I've experienced in the last, maybe 10 years. Because when I was young, I was going through 9/11, and one of the first political films I watched was, of course, Michael Moore's movies.
Yep.
But since then, I haven't seen any. So this was exciting to me, and I appreciate you joining us. Why don't you go and introduce yourself real quick, tell us about the film, and then we'll get started here in just a minute.
Sure. So my name is John Papola, and I'm a producer and the director on The Pursuit. A little bit about me. I have a company called Emergent Order here in Austin, Texas. That's a creative studio dedicated to making content like this, where we bring important ideas to life through the characters and academics and innovators that are trying to make the world a better place. And Arthur Brooks, the star of this film, is one of those people. He's an academic and a social entrepreneur. And he brings a really important perspective and approach to talking about progress and capitalism and, focusing our concern on the people at the margins. And the movie is going to speak for itself, but it's something that was a 3.5-year journey together with Arthur to bring his ideas to life and to find characters out there in the world all around the globe whose stories could be an example of the ideas that Arthur and I both share and both believe in, which is that when you let people rise to the occasion and empower them with the freedom to make choices for themselves. And sometimes when you knock down the barriers that stand in their way, and there are barriers, as we know, they can achieve unimaginable heights, and they can exceed their own expectations, and that we all have incredible potential, and we all deserve dignity. And that's those themes of dignity and potential are at the core of this film, and they're what we're all about, and it's what the film's about, and it's what our company Emergent Order is about. And so I'm excited for the folks who are going to watch the film here now, and then hopefully share it with your friends and family. It's an optimistic story in a very difficult time to be optimistic. And so Anthony, I'm happy to say any more or turn it over to you to start the process.
Yeah, let's we'll go ahead and get the film started here, everybody. It runs about 75 minutes. John's going to stick around and answer some questions at the end. This is an amazing documentary about capitalism and free markets and just making people more prosperous and happy. So without further ado, let's go and get started. And thank you, John.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.
All right, Arthur interview, take one.
What do you think? Like, how do you see yourself? How do you see the ideas that you're so passionate about? Like, what is your story?
Americans are looking for a new way forward. Our country is more divided than it's been in years, and we're leaving too many of our brothers and sisters behind. People have lost trust in our political leaders to solve these problems. They don't think that conservatives actually care about the poor. And frankly, liberal solutions aren't working either. My name is Arthur Brooks. I've spent the last 20 years as a professor and head of a think tank in Washington, D.C., working to improve public policy for human welfare. But this is pretty far from where I started out.
What's this former professor of the French horn, yes, the French horn, up to? And how did he reach the top of the conservative pecking order in Washington?
Arthur Brooks, sir! I do research. I travel around the world. I get to meet with all different kinds of people. I'm trying to learn about the best systems for helping people improve their lives. Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor to be here and with all of you. The reason I came into the free enterprise movement many years ago is because poverty is the thing I care about the most. From 1970 until today, the percentage of the world's population living at starvation's door has decreased by 80%. 2 billion people have been pulled out of starvation level poverty. Starvation's door. What did that? What did that? That was my 80% vision quest to figure out what did that. I wanted the best answer from mainstream economists, left, right, and center. I don't claim to have all the answers, but the answers that I've found have truly changed my life. And I believe it is these same answers that can help to lift up all Americans and bring us back together as a country. The point of the American experience is basically a moral consensus that our society should push opportunity to the people who need it the most. This is our pursuit, and it's predicated on two fundamental moral principles: human dignity and human potential. I want to be a warrior for dignity and potential. That's what it comes down to. It's 1983. I'm 19 years old, and I've just dropped out of college. I knew I was going to be a professional French horn player. What's that? Is that even a job? It's a thing, it turns out. I'm on tour in India with my brass quintet. We're in a pretty questionable airplane on our way to Calcutta. And I'm excited because this is the first time I've really been out on my own. We're 30,000 feet above the ground when the pilot comes over the intercom and says what you never want to hear, which is, we have a problem. We need to land right now. And so we did. We landed in a city called Chennai, and we had a stopover that lasted for several days. I was in a hotel at the edge of a slum. I'd wake up the next morning, and I started walking around the slum, and I had never seen anything like it. I saw poverty like I've never seen before. I saw starving kids and lepers and beggars every place. How could we in America have so much when other people in the same world had so little? These are questions that haunted me for years.
Some in the West have this romantic notion that somehow by poverty, our souls are getting, burnished into the radiant light of God or some strange thing like that. It isn't. We hate being poor.
In 1947, India won independence from Britain. The tragedy is that between 1947 and 1991, it remained incredibly poor. When Mother Teresa was in her heyday, India was essentially a byword for poverty. If you thought of a part of the world that was best known for being crowded, dirty, and incredibly poor, it was probably for many people India.
When I first visited, one of the poorest places in India was a slum in Mumbai called Dharavi.
Hey, look at this guy here. He had a shaving yesterday. He had a shave yesterday.
Did he?
Because he was hot.
I've returned to India many times over the years since my first visit. Along the way, I met Krishna. He's this guy who grew up in poverty in a little village outside of Bangalore.
In Western world, they think slum. Their idea is poor people or beggars, right? It's not. It's not true. Pura leke jao. Pura leke jao. See, even that comes in a different size. You see the big ones.
Yeah.
See, they're painting. This is like Diwali is like very busy season for, and also a lot of this stuff exported. See in Dharavi, I'm sure nobody begs, right? I mean, because they are all live in their own dignity and pride.
When you go to Dharavi, you see a lot. It's hugely overstimulating. Intense smells, unbelievable heat, incredible noise, tons of people. It has one of the highest population densities of any area in the world. This is still one of the poorest urban areas in India. And to most American eyes, the progress here is not obvious. But look closer. In Dharavi and places like it throughout the country, there's been a rise in living standards like I have never seen in my life, or I couldn't have been able to imagine.
When we were children, we didn't have any proper food to eat. We have many kids.
How many?
We are 8 kids. I remember my dad when he used to eat. He used to eat half meal and then half he used to give us and say, you guys share it.
See, in the West, we sort of think there hasn't been progress. We think that poverty in the developing world is hopeless. Nothing can be done. What I didn't realize in my early visits to India is that the country had become a battleground in the 20th century philosophical war between capitalism and socialism. And India, for decades, had chosen the latter.
In India, we had democratic socialism, and everything, of course, was owned by the state. All the companies were owned by the state.
This belief in planning, this belief in the all-knowing bureaucrat, as opposed to whether people can make their own decisions. People know best for themselves. So for instance, licensing. Bureaucrats sitting in Delhi could make production decisions for a firm thousands of miles away.
That can only benefit a very tiny section of the population.
The opposing ideology seemed to promote chaos, set people free, let people decide what they're going to do with their talent and their time and their treasure, and then they will spontaneously organize in a way that creates the most wealth. These were the ideas that were at war with each other for years, decades, as a matter of fact. And most smart people didn't know which was the right approach. Well, we found out.
Good evening, everyone. From the west side of the Berlin Wall at the Brandenburg Gate, I'm Tom Brokaw. The Brandenburg Gate, of course, is in East Berlin, and the sound that you hear and what you're seeing tonight, not hammers and sickles, but hammers and chisels as young people take down this wall bit by bit.
With the fall of the Soviet Union, countries all over the world began to adopt the core elements of capitalism: globalization, free trade, private property rights, the rule of law, and entrepreneurial competition. The results of all this have been nothing short of miraculous.
We completely reversed our policies in India in '91 in a big way. It was a closed system, no competition. The industry was highly inefficient. In all areas, we permitted more competition. Competition is what helps you to improve outcomes.
The World Bank forecasts India to be the world's fastest growing economy in 2016.
It means India's growth has overtaken that of fellow Asian giant China.
You know, today India is celebrated as this rising economy. Where has this rising economy come from? Did it just mushroom out of the blue one day? No, it happened after 25 years of the economy growing because of liberalization, because we opened the markets. We were a closed market, we were a statist economy, we broke free of all that, and we set the companies and our entrepreneurial energies free.
You walk in the narrow, small lanes of Dharavi, you hear the sound of machineries. So that's what made me to say, we have to show this. Because it's changed my mindset towards Dharavi. We have garment industries, everything, more than 10,000 small-scale industries. That it's not a slum, it's a hub of industries. Like you see the small place here, right? See, something is set up there. And all the street, you will see every inch is used. Every inch is,
Nothing goes
there
to
is
waste.
something, yeah, nothing is
But
wasted.
everything is for entrepreneurship.
Exactly, exactly. I think, see, look, my shop, you know. See, he's trying to sell me. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. See, he's a buy something from my shop. So that's what makes this place amazing.
Today, for the first time in its history, India has a growing middle class. Even in some of the poorest parts of the country, there's a sense of progress.
Capitalism allows human beings to choose an action to fulfill their own destiny. If it had not been for liberalization, people in Dharavi, many people in Dharavi, would never have the opportunities that they have today. Forget per capita GDP, we didn't even have per capita hope. And the markets have given us per capita hope.
लेकिन धारावी में पढ़ा या नहीं पढ़ा, काम करके पैसा लेके आराम से घर पे खाते हैं, वो मिलता है इधर। तो ये धंधा चालू करने के लिए जो पोल्ट्रीज 10 रुपये का रहता है, वो मैं 7 रुपये में दे देती हूँ। क्यों? कि जमा करने के लिए बच्चे को कभी पहले चालू किया था ना, रोने को आ जाएगा, तभी 20 रुपये घर में नहीं थे। अभी उसका पढ़ने का, करने का, ये घर का सब करने का वो रहता है। मेरा एक ही रीजन है, मेरे दोनों बच्चे पढ़ लिख के बड़े हो जाए, वो अच्छे पढ़ेंगे, अच्छी जॉब में जाएंगे, तो मेरा कुछ अच्छा होएगा ना, ऐसे तो कुछ होने वाला नहीं है।
You know, we have a saying, if you make your hand dirty, you will get the curd to eat. You understand? Because you do your work, you know, you don't say it's dirty, you know.
I don't argue that the market's always perfect. What is ever always perfect? But for the poor people, those people living in Dharavi, they're proud of it. They're building their lives.
If you look at the impact on poverty, the basic trajectory of the country has changed. If India had not adopted economic reforms, there would be 375 million poor people more in the country today. And next to China, this has been the greatest eradication of human poverty on the planet.
The progress in India over the past decades has been extraordinary. It turns conventional wisdom on its head. Things are not getting worse, they're getting better. And India is not alone. Since 1970, the percentage of the world's population living in extreme poverty on $1 a day or less has declined by 80%. 2 billion people around the world have lifted themselves out of extreme poverty. Infant mortality has fallen by 60%. Literacy around the world continues to increase year after year. And the people who've benefited the most from this, it's not the rich. It's those at the very bottom of the economic ladder. When you go to a place like Dharavi and you have a sense of American history, one of the things that you notice is that the circumstances are very different because Dharavi exists in the modern world. But the level of material success and deprivation that you see is more or less what you would have found in New York in the 19th century. What's the lesson from that? The lesson is they are us, separated by time. My great-grandparents emigrated from Denmark in the early 1900s. They were every bit as poor as the people of Dharavi. And they picked up and moved because they thought they could and because they were ambitious and entrepreneurial. They worked hard every day, bought a farm in South Dakota, and after a generation, my family was no longer poor. We're a nation of people who had to start from scratch. Under our Constitution and system of free enterprise, the American people managed to build the most successful, most innovative, and most charitable, upwardly mobile society in all of human history. Across the economic spectrum, people in America generally live materially better lives than almost anywhere else in the world, which is why, year after year, people continue to come to the United States seeking opportunity. The backbone of the United States is people who believe that progress is possible.
I didn't want to buy this truck. I wanted to buy a big old nice truck because I wanted to look cool in it, right? My family, my grandfather were telling me, hey man, think smart, think, economically, you're barely starting your business, you have very little money. They made me buy the truck. Yeah, I tell my daughter, I'm gonna fix this truck up, I'm gonna repaint it, and I'm gonna give it to you. Oh, I don't want that truck, Dad. I want me a new convertible or some, I said, no. I said, if you can drive this one for 2 years and then I'll buy you a brand new car. But you got to start out in this one. She doesn't want it. But I think I'm going to make her have it anyway. Think y'all finish them today? We got to do 33 of them. It's 33. 33, already counted them? Yeah, it's 33. So I was living a negative lifestyle. Kind of stopped caring, hang around back with my old friends. Got involved with the gang more deeply again. I would smoke with drugs. I'd bring them from Mexico over here, and then I would sell them. And then it got to a point in my life where I didn't abandon my daughter, but I had to leave her because of my mistakes. I went to prison. And it destroyed me for a long time. I knew that I had to make a change somehow. I knew that I couldn't come out that same person. I didn't have anything. And the only thing I had was to motivate myself and to build something from nothing, which we have. Me and my brother, we started this business with 2 shovels and a wheelbarrow. I started this from the ground up. I learned from the bottom, all the way from the bottom, from digging ditches to setting the farm to carpentry work. I've been there. I know what it is to bend over, grab the shovel, dig, sweat for hours, work when you don't want to work. Whatever we got to do, however hard we have to work to get the American dream, honestly, then that's what we're going to do,
The American free enterprise system is our gift to the world and is the secret for all of us to pull up the least fortunate, most marginalized members in our own societies and to share those values with people all around the world. Oh, man. When I was a kid, I knew for sure where my vote came down. I was all about art and music. That's all I wanted to do. So I painted every day with my mom after school, and then when I was 4, I started violin. When I was 5, I started piano. When I was 9, I started the French horn, and that's the one that really captured my imagination because I was really good at it. Oh, yeah. When I was 25, I moved to Barcelona. I ended up taking a job in the Barcelona Orchestra. Actually, I didn't move there because of the orchestra. I went there because I was chasing a girl. This is exactly the same. When I came here, I didn't even know the language. Somehow, I convinced her to marry me. Oh, That was 27 years ago when we got married. You remember this? You know, it actually looks smaller.
It does look small.
It looks smaller. It's like there were thousands more people in here than could fit in here.
You have been in the States too long.
I know. Barcelona is the most hard-red place in Spain, and Spain is a pretty left-wing country. So she's got this family that she's been hearing since she was a kid.
Posem els boquerones a la taula, no? O te'ls has menjat tu solet? Ok. I didn't like Americans. I thought America was imperialistic, materialistic, capitalistic society. I hated it like everybody else around me. So, but I met this American guy and traveled there with him a few times. So, wait, this is not like I thought, right? I learned English and I changed because of him. He showed me that Americans were okay. Éramos como todo el mundo aquí, ¿no?
Sí.
Éramos como todo el mundo. Pero,
Hombre, no. Arthur aquí era una persona.
No,
más-
Arthur. Arthur fue el agente cambio, el factor cambio.
Pero yo también era un peludo.
Sí, no,
hay peludos y peludos.
Hay peludos y
Una
peludos.
foto tuya. Hay peludos y peludos.
Yo me acuerdo, cuando yo vine aquí a vivir, era diferente que ahora. O sea, que yo veo el cambio. Yo vine aquí en el año 89, ¿no? Nos casamos después. Y era el post-Franco. Pero vengo ahora, es increíble. Es que hay mucha gente, muchos de estos que dicen que el anticapitalismo y todo.
Porque durante el gobierno de Franco es cuando hubo más clase media. ¿Verdad? Porque cuando hubo más, y Franco sí algo hizo, que hizo muchas cosas, fue crear una clase media que ahora casi ha desaparecido.
Dices eso, que cada vez que vienes aquí ha cambiado y está peor. ¿Tú crees eso?
Sí.
¿De prometer? I go back to Barcelona all the time, and just like in the US, people are convinced that the system is failing them. In Spain, there's a movement called 15M, which means the 15th of March, which was the day that sort of the Spanish Occupy movement got kicked off. It's pretty hard to find people in Barcelona who are not on the hard left. What I wanted to do was to actually interview them and ask them their views of free enterprise and of what American ideas are doing in the world. Capitalism gets a pretty bad rap. And the reason is because ordinary good-hearted people look around and they see exploitation, which exists, and they see discrimination, which exists, and they see environmental degradation, which exists. They see a system that kind of holds people down and takes their stuff. They see fat cats who have a special deal into the government. I say, no, that's not capitalism. That's cronyism. That's wired deals. That's the antithesis of what a free society is all about. I like to think that I understand other people's point of view, but I don't always. I have to remember that people have different experiences than I have, which is animating them to hold a different point of view.
No tenim en compte, no? És aquest sistema que volem transformar i el que volíem era donar-vos la benvinguda i fer una acció simbòlica amb tots i totes vosaltres.
Sí, a mi no m'importa si hi ha gent que té molts diners, si no hi ha una gent que té molts pocs diners. La qüestió és la desigualtat, no l'acumulació en si. La riquesa i la pobresa no la marca el tenir molts diners o poc. La marca el tenir molts diners al costat de qui té molt pocs.
Però tu creus que una persona podria, o sigui, ha de poder muntar un negoci?
Totalment.
O sigui, que això, aquest part de capitalisme et sembla bé?
Això no és capitalisme. Tothom pot muntar el seu negoci, no?
Juan is a smart guy. One of his big causes is what he calls anti-capitalism. I'm thinking, you're not anti-capitalist. You're anti some idea of capitalism that exists in the ether. I què hauríem de fer? Què et sembla seria un sistema més just, més compassiu?
Si agafem un referent històric, ha tingut les seves coses bones i les seves coses dolentes. I per mi, com en tot, no només en això, però com en tot, el que hem de fer és aprendre les coses bones i aprendre les coses dolentes per no repetir.
I understand that ideology, and I understand that it dies hard because it's very difficult for people to get their minds around the idea that the best way for you to help poor people is the very system that you thought was rigged against the poor. If you worry about inequality and say that capitalism doesn't wipe it out, you're simply going to say, I am just as happy bringing the top down as I am bringing the bottom up. If you want to be a social justice warrior to bring people to their highest levels of dignity and potential, if you believe that we're all created equal, you should be a warrior for opportunity.
Llavors, el nostre convidat és el Dr. Brooks.
Desgraciadament, aquest sistema d'oportunitats d'avui no funciona com anteriorment. Com podria una agenda de justícia social invertir aquestes tendències i obrir oportunitats per a tots? Això és una bona pregunta. M'ho pregunto això a mi també. I presented capitalism as the face of people who want to help the world. And that's something that most people haven't heard before. Most people in America haven't heard that.
What I've seen on NYU's campus and what I've seen in polls all over, 51% of people between 18 and 29 no longer support the system of capitalism.
Capitalism is a cancer, and it's a pathology, it's a sickness.
We need to stop investing in privatization. We need to start worrying about the 99% of the population. We need to start investing our money into social welfare programs and worrying about the middle to lower class, because we are not truly a great nation until all of us are strong and all of us are prospering.
Here's the great irony of our times. People across the political spectrum in the wealthiest countries in the world are increasingly turning against the very system that's lifted us out of poverty. Even in the US, where support for socialist parties is small compared to Europe, support is growing quickly. Increasing numbers of young people are leaning toward something called democratic socialism. How do you talk to young people about capitalism? So pretend I don't know anything about capitalism. How do you describe how the capitalist system works today?
Well, capitalism still is a system where goods and services are produced for a profit, and where investment is controlled by capitalists or large shareholders or their appointed managers, and where working people generally have only their labor to sell because they don't own capital. So the question is capitalism democratic in that do working people have any voice over how they produce, what they produce? And then the inequalities that most capitalist systems generate, don't they have to be redressed by some degree of government intervention, social welfare programs?
So is that the biggest problem that you see today, is that capitalism, as we practice it in the United States, is fundamentally undemocratic?
I'd say it's undemocratic and fundamentally doesn't fulfill its own claim to have equality of opportunity.
I talk to younger people, there's a discontent in the feelings in terms of how this is working. The American dream is always predicated on you work hard, you get the right grades, you go to the right schools, or get the right trade, or whatever else, you're going to make it. And a lot of time, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes it's because of, life gives you a bad hand, but sometimes it's, as was brought up earlier, we all don't have the same platform of being able to have a certain chance and opportunity. And sometimes that's because of being born in a certain economic place or having generations who are in a certain economic place. We don't get a real voice in this country anymore until, unfortunately, things get to an extreme.
I hear a lot of discomfort with markets sorting out economic problems because either it's really undemocratic or frankly, it's just unfair. What countries should we be learning from, in your view?
I would look at the Scandinavian countries in terms of the social welfare state, in terms of state regulation of the economy, in terms of labor rights. They're much more developed than our own country. I do think one reason why younger people say that socialism is preferable to capitalism, or they're more enthusiastic about socialism rather than capitalism, 30 and under, is that they vaguely associate socialism with a more egalitarian and more socially mobile society, and I think they think of Scandinavia.
For years, I've been looking at these surveys that talk about happiness in different places in the world, and they always come to the same conclusion: that Danes are happiest. A lot of people in the United States say, this is the modern Shangri-La. We should build our own country around the principles of Danish happiness. We should have a government like this. We should have a social welfare state like this. Look, my great-grandparents were Danish. They left Denmark for America in search of opportunity. Did they make the wrong call? Would my family have been better off if they had stayed?
No political system can make people happy, but we have political systems that can remove a number of reasons for them to be unhappy.
These were the songs that you sang when you were a child?
Yeah.
In school?
Yeah.
And that's what people want?
Yeah.
To do it together in the morning and start the day? And...
Yeah, that's the main idea, to and go out into the day and in good spirits.
So does anybody go to church and sing these songs anymore, or not so much?
Not so much, no.
No,
they go to the library instead.
They go to the library. I don't know what that was. It was singing in the library in the morning before work, because life is better when you sing in the library in the morning before work. It's this not very fast-moving life. It's, spend your morning singing in the library as opposed to going into work early. It's take off at noon and go to the beach and have an ice cream with your kids. It's the intense life in life. While in Copenhagen, I met up with Michael Booth, a British expat living in Denmark. He's a famous travel writer and brings a unique perspective to Danish life. Welcome aboard. Thank you.
If you talk to a Dane about Denmark, they'll always spin you the line, oh, we're only 5 million people, we're a very small country. But you talk to them a little bit longer, and you discover deep down, they believe they have created the most modern, progressive, well-functioning, fair society in the world. And I'm not sure you can argue with them, actually. The Danes are not skipping gaily down the streets in sombreros, but they are incredibly satisfied with what they have.
I don't find happiness as a certain thing that you are all the time. Happiness appears in moments. And I think there are a lot of moments in Denmark where Danes are happy.
So this month I'm taking care of the kids in the afternoon, but in 1 month I'm very busy, and then she will take care of the kids. So
when our kids were born, we talked about, wow, they choose the winning ticket, They were born into this system where we have everything that we need. Everybody is happy, no one is suffering.
Pudding. Vil du ikke hjælpe med at dække på, Line?
We have a very strong welfare system, and that's quite unique, I think.
We go to doctor sometimes just to get checked and stuff, and that's free.
My education is free. All I have to pay is my books.
It is safe to be here. Of course, we have violence, but not that kind of violence we hear from other part of the world.
Danes live really well inside their they're like hobbits. Right. They like to create a nice, cozy environment.
We seem to value our leisure time and our time with our family more than most countries in the world. And you can say, why is that? When we pay for other welfare benefits, we're paying relatively high taxes. In fact, we're paying the highest taxes in the world.
So what are you paying in taxes?
Top rate is about 56%, but that's just on income tax. Roughly, it's about 75% of your income somehow ends up
in the government.
Yeah. Hold on to your heart there, Arthur.
Denmark and Scandinavia are always called socialist, and that means everything and nothing. What we understand as socialism has become so complicated. The ironic thing is that Denmark and America actually have more in common than most people realize.
I know that some people in the US associate the Nordic model with some sort of socialism. Therefore, I would like to make one thing clear. Denmark is far from a socialist planned economy. Denmark is a market economy.
Denmark and the rest of Scandinavia are wealthy modern societies that developed through the mid-20th century, much like the United States did, through free market economies and small governments with minimal social spending. Their large welfare systems are, like our own, a relatively recent phenomenon.
Denmark did not start out as a welfare state. And I don't think it's the natural state for Denmark. In fact, what we have spent most of the political energy on the economic side since the early 80s of scaling back government.
I don't think it's a socialistic utopia. I don't see it
not
that
at
way.
all.
Not at all.
We
I
are
see it
highly
as a-
capitalistic in
Yeah.
Denmark.
I think capitalism is all right, because I have my own company, and I think it's okay to give a little bit away, to people who is not feeling so good.
There are some things in Denmark that are pretty attractive. The place definitely has its charms, but their culture does have a downside.
This is not a land for individuals. It's not, right? And if you are eccentric or strange or super ambitious, you're going to struggle here. Danes would probably consider themselves to be the most free people on earth. They have free democracy, freedom of speech. But from my perspective, when I first came here, I didn't see them as free at all, actually. This is, as I say, a boutique country of 5 million people with this special history, which some claim goes back 1,000 years to the Vikings.
If we look at Danish culture, there's a saying called jantelov.
Jantelov is a list of commandments, like Old Testament-style commandments. The commandments include, thou shalt not think thou art better than me.
You shouldn't think you're something.
Thou shalt not think you can teach me anything.
Don't think you are the special one.
Even here in cosmopolitan Copenhagen, where they might deny it, it still applies.
It is a social norm that tells you to do exactly the opposite of the American dream. Don't stand out.
We build up this ideal picture of how things are going to work. And if you don't fit into that picture, you fail.
People talk about the United States as being inadequate, and so they look to another country and they only see the things that they want.
I get asked a lot, should America become more like Denmark? Like there's some kind of template that you can just take from a country of 5 million people and take that template and impose it on America, on the United States of America, with its huge population and massive diversity. That's insane.
In this system, where we're all very similar, there is also social norms that will ensure that the misuse of social benefits are smaller.
I think you can see Denmark as one big community. And with that, I mean that we are one and the same.
Globalization is a threat to Denmark. Danes certainly see it as a threat. You are free in Denmark, but you're free to be Danish.
The Danish People's Party is celebrating its victorious result in legislative elections with 21% of the votes. This makes the anti-immigration People's Party Denmark's second largest. Described by detractors as populist or even far-right, the DPP confirms an anti-immigration trend in the Nordic countries.
I don't like it. These people is good enough, man. I don't like Muslims.
They can't just come here and do whatever they want, like staring at girls in nightclubs and stuff. They shouldn't be allowed to do that.
De her mennesker, især unge, raske, friske muslimske mænd, er lokket hertil, fordi de vil gerne have del i det, vi har skabt. Vi har skabt noget, og hvad har skabt den succes som Europa? Det er i høj grad de etnisk, kulturelle, politisk homogene nationalstater, der har skabt.
What's attractive about Denmark to a lot of Americans is just not a complete picture of the country. Like much of Europe, the Scandinavians cling to an ethnic national identity with centuries of cultural and ethnic tradition. There's really not a sense of that in the United States because we're all different. We're all from different places. There's not a sense of American ethnicity. There isn't now. I hope there never is. What it really is, the difference is this. Other countries are places. The United States is an idea. That's what makes it so strong. But it means we can never take this for granted. There's a rising tide of populist nationalism in America, and that's a real threat to what makes the U.S. exceptional.
If you don't speak English and don't contribute, get out. One people, one nation, and immigration. Made in USA.
I think what we're seeing right now is a breakdown, not so much between the right and the left, but between people who want a more closed society and people who want a more open society. So why is this happening? You know, when I talk to people who are caught up in the populism of today, the reason that they're so uncomfortable, I mean, it really comes down to this. They know that too many people in their country, maybe including them, have been rendered superfluous by events and by currents, by culture, by policy, and by government. Populism comes when people are struggling to feel needed. Unfortunately, there are many communities in the United States confronting that struggle today.
In this area, there's not much other work here as far as, well-paying jobs. The mines was really about the only thing here that was a really good paying job.
We're like a poster child for a mono economy here in Eastern Kentucky. It's good while it's booming. I mean, you can't blame people. And it's just like my parents, my dad. I mean, why diversify when you're making a living?
They didn't think about the future. What we're going to do if the mines ever shut down or, coal goes away, what are we going to do? They didn't think about that.
They didn't expect it.
They didn't expect it,
I guess we're in the mindset right now to where a lot of people has accepted the fact that coal is gone and it doesn't look good for it to ever come back. It's just, it's hit us really hard.
Eastern Kentucky and areas like it all over the United States are facing deep economic challenges. These are the areas that our welfare state was built to help. Lyndon Johnson, he gave his Great Society speech that kicked off the Great Society and the War on Poverty on May 22nd, 1964. That was one day after I was born.
The Great Society rests on abundance and liberty for all. It demands an end to poverty and racial injustice.
This was a set of programs dedicated to obliterating poverty and improving civil rights. It was an ambitious set of goals based on the radical equality of human dignity. And I agree with every word.
In '64, when I was a reporter for the Ashland Daily, the paper assigned me to come and cover Lyndon Johnson's visit to Inez, which was part of a day-long trip where he had been stopping at places all over the country but this Inez was a place in which he was going to launch this war on poverty. Everyone's very excited about it. Nobody knew exactly why we'd been chosen for this fairly dubious honor.
LBJ's goals were noble, and this poor Appalachian town was hungry for the progress that he promised. So, 50 years later, how is Inez doing? Are these programs helping to get people back on their feet?
The reason you got more poverty here is you got this system giving people, checks every month, food stamps or whatever. They got hold of that and they don't want to let it go. You know what I mean?
Generations of people.
You got generations of people who,
And don't get me wrong, that's good programs.
Yeah.
They're there to help you, but they shouldn't raise your family, then raise your family's family.
Right.
That's been abused.
And that's what's happening. It's helping us some right now. I mean, it is. I mean, I'm not going to deny it. But do I want to live on their program? Do I want the government to tell me, here's how you're going to live? No.
Financially speaking, it's been
rough. It's been
as
hard.
my granny would say, you rob Peter to pay Paul. I mean, which bill can I pay this time? Which one can I let go? I mean, and it makes it hard.
We have done well in America at providing material well-being for people who are struggling with regard to what they have for their families, their food, their housing. And most people on the right and left view that as an achievement. I think they should. We don't want to live in a society where there are people who are destitute all across America. But they're not earning their own success. They're not finding that dignity that comes with knowing you're taking care of yourself and your family. And in some respects, the programs are encouraging people to rely on government assistance and not rely enough on their own value.
It's hard on you, because you're not working and you're used to working and there's nothing to do and there's no jobs out there. I don't have the education as the younger generations got. If I went back to school, the time I graduated, I'd be in my 50s, who's going to hire me? Ain't nobody going to hire me, 50 years old.
People that I've seen, a lot of their self-worth is directly tied to their job and directly tied to how productive they are in a day. So if you take a coal miner, a typical coal miner, and all of a sudden you take away his job, in effect, you're taking away his self-worth.
If we want to deliver on the promises of the Great Society, we have to start by admitting that the welfare state is not doing right by struggling people in this country. From the end of World War II in 1945 through to 1965, the poverty rate declined dramatically. But since the implementation of the Great Society's anti-poverty programs in 1966, our poverty rate has remained stuck at around 13%. Meanwhile, working-age male participation in the workforce has declined significantly. The U.S. welfare system has not fixed our poverty problems, but it's not for lack of trying. Since 1966, the U.S. government has spent over $23 trillion on anti-poverty programs alone. We've failed. And it's not about the money. That's not what I worry about at all. I don't care about the $20 trillion. I care about the human lives that have been lost. We tend to trap people in poverty when we treat them like liabilities to manage, as opposed to assets in the human family.
Even if you look way back to FDR, when the safety net was sort of established in the height of the Great Depression, he called welfare a narcotic, a subtle destroyer of the human spirit. Nobody says, I want more handouts. Everybody says, I want more work. If you probe more deeply, what you will discover is that what they want more than anything else is to be part of America. They want to be citizens. They want to be contributors to society.
People don't want to be given things for nothing. They aspire to earn their success. We have to do better in our welfare systems than what we've done before.
The real poverty exists in this community and any community in the world. Is when a young man or a young woman grows up with no dream, with no desire. That's poverty, man.
It's kind of amazing when I listen to public policy debates today. It sounds almost as if Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals can't agree on anything except this one thing. Poor people's work is a punishment. That's not right. I mean, it's like what the one thing you can agree on is that the right wingers want to punish people with work and left wingers want to exempt people from the punishment of work. So either sock it to them with them or exempt them from it. That's both wrong. All work is sanctified. All work creates value. When we forget this, we move beyond needing people. And when people don't feel needed, they lose their basic sense of dignity. A great society is one in which we can instantiate the greatness inside each person. What is the greatness inside each person? It's the understanding that the root of the pursuit of happiness is one in which each person has the dignity to be able to earn his or her success and the potential to make it so. This is not to say that we don't need a strong safety net. I believe we do, but it needs to be based on the dignity of work.
So nobody's going to do the work here for you. The staff here are here to guide, support you. We're here to answer and to listen to you if we can. But I need to tell you something. Most of the answers are within yourself.
These men in the Doe Fund, they're not just the unloved members of society. They're the people that we traditionally consider to be unlovable. They're homeless. They're mostly drug and alcohol dependent or have been. It's the test of our moral fiber. The Doe Fund does miracles with these guys.
The principle of the Doe Fund is incredibly simple, and that is work works, and that the inherent value of all people exists and needs to be unlocked. And when you unlock it, then that person's potential becomes limitless, just like every other American.
When guys come in, it's very hard because some of them are so deep down in the hole that they're not really trying to hear anything. Self-love has to come first. When we begin to love ourselves, then we can love other people.
We don't care where you came from. We treat you like you're somebody, and you can do it.
Yes, sir. Let's go. Yeah, right here.
It's really unlike any homeless shelter you've ever seen. When the guys first arrive, they spend their first 30 days doing basic work around the facility.
This is an opportunity, and you got to make the most of it. And I say that because I am one of you. I'm up from the bottom. I'm from one of the seats where you were. I just was 22 years ago. Hand Up is what we do here. We're going to provide you a roadmap, a direction, and then you're going to do all the rest of the work. We're not going to do the work for you.
Let's go. You should be outside already, no? 10-2. You telling me you got to find a dispatcher. He's outside already. You could go. What we do in our program is all the men you see in blue, they go out, clean the streets 7 days a week, rain, sleet, snow or shine.
Let's go, yo. Let's go. Make sure your uniforms is intact.
I'm honest. I'm not going to front.
Hudson, complete 14.
We clean 150 to 175 miles of street daily.
You ask yourself, how did my life get the way it get that I'm homeless? Why me? I had to look at myself and tell myself that I still matter. I'm somebody, and I can make it. You stay on the sidewalk, I got the curb.
Okay.
I'm doing well.
Look like you're doing better than well, man.
You think so?
I know so. You alive? You smiling?
My life is going on,
My life matters. I'm somebody. I'm gonna make it. I'm not gonna give up.
Hey, Johnny, good morning, Johnny. Can I get some numbers from you out of Brooklyn? Today, I'm working here a little over 18 years. April 21st, 1997, that was the last day I used any sort of drug, drink, anything. So I've been clean since. So, when I got here, was the greatest thing that ever happened in my life. You done with the homework?
Yeah, he's finished, yeah.
I'm married today. I have a son who looks up to me today. Ready? Want to do the layup again? Oh, you got past me. Having a child in my life, have my wife in my life.
Oh, yeah. That's right, see?
Wow, it's deep. Just talking about it, I get like emotional. All right, you want to hit the swing? All right, come on. I had to earn to become who I am today. You know what I'm saying? I worked hard. I continue to work hard because I want to earn more. And I think it means a lot more than just a job and getting a paycheck.
If you earn it and you achieve it, and it's not given to you, but you believe that it's something that's actually come from your own merit and hard work and personal responsibility, that will be the source of your satisfaction. Truly, earned success is one of the great secrets to the pursuit of happiness.
You didn't go all the way through? Right up to there. Then you go this way. You work in the kitchen, the first job you're gonna do is prepping vegetables. You're gonna have to stand on your feet all day.
A lot of the guys we got now, they're young men. They've been in the foster system. No one ever cared about them. No one ever said, listen, you can't do that. You want a better life, you gotta work.
And also, I button up your thing, all right?
My bad.
You gotta look professional, all right? It's not a disco. Okay? Come on.
I have many guys who transformed their lives. I have a young man, Angel Lopez, had no schooling, no work history, and now he's an integral part of our kitchen.
Well, to me, it's not a job to me. It's like a school. Here, I'm learning something new every day. Right? And I take notes down. When no one's around or the day is slow, I'll practice it.
You want to place the cake right in the center here? Nice.
Feels good to be doing something positive, something fun, you know what I mean? Instead of being out there running the streets, I don't have to worry about nobody trying to hurt me or nothing like that, you know what I mean?
Put your hand underneath, and that's a complete job.
Beautiful.
I'm looking nice today, right, boy?
Yeah, me too, right? Yeah, you know what's crazy? I used to clean these streets over here.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, you do that.
That's how you start the program, cleaning the streets. What keeps me motivated is these guys. I mean, I say, you know what? When I get older, I don't want to be in a homeless shelter when I get older. Hey, buddy, can you cross the street now? Does the stop sign say cross?
We know how to pick, right?
But so what? You still gotta be safe, right or wrong? You see Mom? Can we go now?
Yep.
Let's go. It's something we love. I'm gonna teach him how to start baking, right?
The only thing I know how to cook is French toast.
See, I told him how to cook French toast. Let's get back to this graduation. Some of my same old friends from my neighborhood walked by me one day while I was cleaning and kicked my bucket and laughed at my uniform. But I just kept thinking, I'm a working man and I'm not going back to prison. I wanted to get in the kitchen, into Gino's house, because in the kitchen, there's love. In the kitchen, you can do something good all day. every day. And I knew that bucket was gonna get me there. So thank you, everyone, for my first graduation. Thank you for my future. Good night.
What we have to find is the way that people can earn their success. The system of opportunity and free enterprise that's lifted so many people up is fundamentally an aspirationally based system, not a greed-based system. Greed is not the basis of capital. Anybody who tells you that is lying to you or doesn't understand capitalism. People bring selfishness and greed. You can't fix the human heart by getting rid of capitalism. But capitalism alone can't fix society either. Morals have to come first. Morals are based on the sense of social solidarity, and that comes from a sense that we are, in fact, our brother's keeper. That comes from love. That comes from a sense that we should have love for each other all the time. If everything works, if anything works, it's because we're doing what we do on the basis of love in our lives. This road is made for 1 1/4 cars. So the cars are coming up here around blind corners, passing. I mean, these guys are professionals, but then you notice that there's a burned out hull of a car off the side all the way down to the bottom of the cliff. You're like, yeah, it's good till it's not. We're on a windy road in the Himalayan foothills in India. We're going to Dharamsala, which is the home of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's a warrior for human welfare. He's a believer in the potential and dignity of every single person. Free enterprise is about compassion and justice at its best. So therefore, this is our stuff too. I had this theory when I was a kid that you get to invent your whole life. You choose your vocation, you choose your faith, you choose it once. I thought about it and I read a lot, and I had a mystical experience at the Shrine of Guadalupe in Mexico when I was 15. It revealed to me that I was Catholic. For the longest time I wondered, what if I never feel it? Then I realized it doesn't matter. It's a question of your commitment to a constant search for truth, notwithstanding what you feel. If you're not willing to practice what you believe, well, you're never going to do anything, and you're never actually going to find any truth. I think that the suspicion that people have about capitalism comes because they think people like me don't believe in morals and they don't believe in any regulation at all. And that's not true. We want to treat people right. We want to lift people up. And that's what matters the most. Once we get that straight, then the markets can make that better. But if we forget that first step, everything will be ruined.
The biggest problem is having no sensitivity to the needs of others. Abundance is a good thing so long as you use it for others, not only just for yourself.
That's what greed really is. It's putting yourself always ahead of other people. I often reflect on the verse in the New Testament that's most often misquoted. Money is the root of all evil. That's a misquote of St. Paul. Here's the real scripture. For the love of money is the root of all evil. And this really illuminates the problem of materialism. It's not the existence of material things. It's not the abundance around us. That's great. The problem is not the money. It's the love of money. It's not the stuff. The stuff isn't the problem. It's the attachment to the stuff.
Even the Buddha was a prince. They don't remember, or often they choose not to remember, that he began as a prince, that the Buddha rose from abundance. to detachment. Originally, I have this sort of impression, oh, business people, they only concern about profit, and including exploitation. Also, you see, brought a lot of sort of education, new thinking. It's a new way of life, useful. No matter what name, with capitalism on, we have to make friendship with capitalists.
The Dalai Lama wants to collaborate with people who think in all different ways.
We have to start by asking what actually does lead each of us to lead the best life.
When I first started studying the teachings of the Dalai Lama, I learned that Tibetan Buddhists say that there are 4 secrets to a happy life. The first 2 are really intuitive: enlightenment and spirituality. That's what you'd expect. The last 2 secrets to a happy life are worldly satisfaction and wealth.
We're surprised by worldly satisfaction and wealth. First, worldly satisfaction. His Holiness tells us that we have to enjoy our lives, and that comes from serving others. The last is probably the most surprising, when His Holiness said that one of the pillars of a happy life is wealth. And I thought, how can this be possible? Is this materialism? Is this a sense that money is just a good thing? I didn't believe it. But then a year or so later, I realized that I needed to understand what you meant by what it is to be wealthy. What is a wealthy person? Well, recently, I was spending time with a friend of mine who is an entrepreneur in Dharavi, and his name is Krishna Pujari. Krishna and I were walking around Dharavi for several hours, and he told me something very interesting. Krishna told me that he was wealthy. And I looked at him by my American standards, and I said, how can he say he's wealthy? He's poor by American standards. I said, what do you mean that you're wealthy? And he said, I'm wealthy because I've been able to do 3 things: build something, earn my living, and serve other people. And that's what it means to be wealthy. And that's what I understood finally is what His Holiness meant for the pillar of the happiest life, which is wealth.
You should make yourself something useful among the 7 billion human beings. That's the real source of self-dignity and self-respect. You remain isolated from the society and jobless, then actually waste of life. Everyone wants happy life, do not want suffering. Yet, a lot of suffering. Our own creation.
This place is filled with people who are looking for truth, who are looking for happiness. And that's what I'm looking for too. That's what everybody's looking for.
Money cannot provide love. We need love. You are showing genuine interest, not only money matter, but more wider perspective. I really very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness.
Each of us have the ability doing something, change world, not from top, from individual.
I remember looking at it when I worked here. I remember looking up and thinking, man, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Every tile, every bit of mosaic. Look at the stained glass modernist thing. It's unbelievable. All I remember thinking was, I hope I don't screw up this concert. I'm a really lucky person. I'm the luckiest guy I know, actually. I've had the opportunity to live in different places, to know all different kinds of people. All throughout my life, I've met people in different circumstances who want to come to America because the idea of America touches their hearts. I was born in Spokane, Washington, but in truth, I'm an immigrant to America too. What are you doing? There's no mouthpiece in that either.
I do. I have a mouthpiece. Don't worry about it.
Where did you get this? This is actually a decent instrument.
It is.
I haven't played a note in 20 years. What are you doing?
Here we go.
I could have lived in Barcelona forever. But she said, no, I want to live in the States. I want to see what it's like. When we got there, she said, this is a country for dreamers, for people who want to build their lives. That had such a huge impact on me. I mean, I was an immigrant to my own country, and I felt like I'd never seen my own country before. I'd come into my own country not knowing what to expect, and that's what we found. Opportunity. Here's the thing. I'm actually a progressive. I have these traditionally conservative means to get universal ends. Everybody remembers the words to the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence about holding certain truths, that these truths include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why did they talk about happiness? It's interesting. You go back and you read the words of Thomas Jefferson. He was asked later, why did you write about the pursuit of happiness? And he said that he was simply taking dictation from the American mind. Really what he was doing is taking dictation from the American heart, because this is the ethos on which the United States was built. George Washington was a rich guy. Ben Franklin had a lot of dough. Those guys were writing these documents not for them and their landed gentry friends. They were writing it for the riffraff all around them. If you're gonna understand the American experience as Thomas Jefferson was talking about it, the experience written on the American heart, the experience my great-grandparents were seeking, that my own wife was seeking, like people all over the world today who are Americans in their hearts, whether they're here or not, you really have to understand the pursuit of happiness. That's not how do we make sure everybody's happy, it's how can we pursue our happiness? It's active.
I don't know. Happiness is a funny thing. Happiness is it's not something you obtain.
Happiness for me is to provide happiness to other people.
Being able to do what I need to do for my son.
अभी बच्चे लोग पढ़ लेके आगे बढ़ जाएंगे तभी मैं खुश हो जाऊंगी.
I'm convinced that we can lift up the world together. We can pull the next 2 billion people out of poverty. We can give people around the world the freedom to pursue their happiness, and in the process, come together as a country. That's what I plan to do for the rest of my life. To be a warrior for human dignity and potential for all people. I want America to live up to its true promise as a country of ambitious riffraff, pursuing happiness, building something good and meaningful, earning our success, and serving each other.
Awesome film. I appreciate everybody tuning in and taking a watch with me. This is now the third opportunity that I've had to be able to watch this film. And this time I showed it to my 5-year-old son. He's like, "Daddy, are we watching more politics?" I was like, "No, this is the opposite of politics. This is, freedom." So, John, I appreciate you, sticking around and asking a few questions. Seeing as I am the host, I'm going to ask the first one.
Sure.
If anybody has any questions, post them in the comments here. We will post them up on the screen. John will answer them for about 15 minutes or so. And what I was curious about is, after you and I talked at Roanoke, you kind of, I learned more about your libertarian roots. And I was just curious how you got connected to this film, like the history of how you, of all people, became the director for this film about, free markets.
Well, the short answer is that folks that work with Arthur reached out to me because, frankly, because of my Keynes versus Hayek rap videos. They remain probably the most high impact of my work, and they've really made the rounds. And there were, at the time, the first one, Fear the Boom and Bust, came out in 2010. So this is before Hamilton. This is before epic rap battles of history on YouTube. So they were actually it was kind of innovative. Of course, it's not really. Schoolhouse Rock existed long before, but my point is, I had kind of somewhat of a reputation in the sort of industry of free market think tank folks for being able to take capitalism and free market ideas and put a creative spin on it. And so Arthur's folks at AEI reached out to me, said that the executive producers of the movie are the financiers, Joseph and Brenda Callahan, and they had sort of gone to Arthur saying, "We want to get behind having your message get a bigger reception and find a broader audience," and so that's how we all ended up getting connected and teaming up.
Nice. I've seen those videos. I should share them on my page here, so anybody that hasn't can get a taste of them.
Well, and the Mises versus Marx rap video that we released in November with the American Institute for Economic Research, man, it's more timely now than ever. Especially in Seattle.
Yeah, we've got an interesting situation in Seattle right now. That's for sure. Well, that's cool. I've been kind of wondering that since we first met. It's interesting how the world can kind of bring people together, and that in itself is kind of what this movie is about, right? When we're all forced to be the same and not allowed to pursue our full self. Like your connection to Arthur Brooks maybe would never have happened in a place like Denmark.
Well, I'll say real quickly, there's folks asking, for those who missed it, the movie is available on Netflix. So if you have a Netflix account, you can see it in beautiful 4K. And for those of you that saw it here for the first time on the stream, Anthony, thank you for doing that. Here's the thing about Denmark I'm not some advanced expert on Scandinavian culture or anything, but I'll say this. So my business partner Josh, who edited the film with me, was having lunch with a Swedish video editor named Lars, and Lars had not yet seen this movie. And Josh relayed this to me, so this is a secondhand story, but he relayed it to me with incredible glee, and he's like, "I think we got it right in the movie." Because he said he asked Lars, so why are you in Texas editing? And he goes back and forth between Sweden and Texas and maybe LA sometimes. He said, well, in Sweden, have you ever heard of Jantelaw? And it was like, there's this idea that nobody can really stand up too high and you can't be too successful. It's a very oppressive culture. And the taxes are so high. It disincentivizes you from working hard and really striving, and it's a very punishing environment. I mean, he went down the list of all the stuff that we say that gets expressed in the Denmark section of the movie. By the same token, they are actually fairly free market societies. You know, in some respects, there's less business regulation in Denmark than there is here in the United States, with all of our layers of crazy bureaucracies and, you know, federal agencies mandating you to do the exact opposite. So there's no way you can comply and not be in violation of the law. You know, the old like 3 felonies a day rule. Like all of us commit three felonies in a day. We just don't know it because the Federal Register is 75,000 pages long. They're relatively high trust societies, and it is partly because they're ethnically homogenous. You know, you've got a cousin Lars. It's 3 degrees of separation. It's only 5 million people in Denmark, and so of course you're going to trust. There's going to be higher levels of trust, which means there's going to be less. Again, this is not perfect science here, but you know, you're going to be less inclined to want the government to tell your neighbor what to do in a society where you trust your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And in a society where you don't trust your neighbor, or you think your neighbor, or you think people in your community aren't trustworthy, you're going to want the cops to go and tell them to stop. And we have that culture in the US increasingly, where that busybody culture, that desire to, you know, call the cops if you see a kid riding alone down the street because where is their mother or father? Like that kid is too young to be outside alone. It's like, I bet you were outside alone. I bet you were outside alone younger than the kid. What are you doing calling the cops? But we're just like a nation of wimps. And there's actually a book by one of the former editors of Psychology Today about this, and it's called A Nation of Wimps. How we've got increasingly caught up in fear, and we think the world is falling apart, and that everything is. It feels more true now, and maybe it is more true right now. But in general, the slope of history is towards progress and towards a better life. You know, in January. You know, that was the best January in all of human history. It literally was. Fewer poor people in absolute terms, more abundance, more prosperity, more literacy. Everything in the movie, the optimism in the movie is all the truth. But if you go to a group of people and ask them, is poverty better or worse? 75% will say it's worse. 75% of people will tend to think that everything's gotten worse in recent times. We're very nostalgic, and that nostalgia really kind of confuses us about the state of the world. And I don't see how you can I don't see how you can be an informed voter if your fundamental assumptions about the world are wrong.
When things have been trending up for a century, with faults, of course, you know, with warts, which I think one of the people in the film said right at the very beginning. You know, it's not that capitalism is curing all things, right? There's still poor people. Nobody's denying that there aren't warts out there in society still.
I mean, you know, I saw one of the commenters said, "This is why I don't like this. I refuse to use the word capitalism." Because, you know, Marx is sort of the one to call the system capitalism. And, you know, I think there's a truth in that, like, if you look at the Gallup polls about, you know, beliefs about capitalism, you know, you'll hear this thing like 51% of millennials prefer socialism over capitalism. But then if you look deeper on the poll, you'll see like 80% like free enterprise and 95% like entrepreneurship. I mean, even the socialist marching in the street in Spain, maybe actually a communist, is like, well, of course you can have a business. Like, why can't anybody start a business? It's like, well, because you need private property to start a business, and like a lot of the things that you're saying you want make it so that you can't do that. But I think that's the challenge, is that, yeah, we have a language challenge for sure, but I think there is a kind of basic level of civics that's been lost. I collaborated a little bit with Richard Dreyfuss a few years ago, and he has this big civics project, the Dreyfuss Initiative, and I think he's right that
that might be the biggest question ever.
Yeah, we don't have civics education. Okay, let's see here. What are the successful processes that you have seen to motivate homeless or homeless that are on drugs to enter facilities that can help them recover, similar to the facility in the video? We all know that a person won't quit their vices until they're ready. That's true. What can society do to hasten that journey and make the choice to quit and take control of their lives? So thanks for asking that question, Aaron. That program in New York City, the Doe Fund, is a really powerful program. It has some, in the best possible sense, copycats around the country. And we've actually done work with an organization called Stand Together, which is funded in part by Charles Koch, that invests in organizations like the Doe Fund, anti-poverty, civil society, private, voluntary organizations. I think you're really right on the money that it's very hard to get someone who doesn't want to improve their life to improve their life. And I think at some fundamental level, we're all human animals. We all want to live. But if you're caught in the throes of alcohol and drugs and depression and mental illness, and which a lot of people who are on the street suffer from, that can be, you can be in a very different place. And I think if you look at the organizations out there below the level of, you have the Social Security Disability Office and these government programs, and I think they're well intended, and they're a Band-Aid at best. But below the surface of them is this fabric of other organizations. I think over 85% of them in the United States are Christian or religious, and I think that is a big motivator for a lot of people to change their lives, is that they find God. And I think that there's something powerful in that. And whether you believe in God or not, whether you believe in Christ or not, I think that you need to find a path to believing in your own dignity and that you deserve to have a life worth living. And I think you need other people sometimes to help you see that in yourself. And so I wish as much energy would go into that, into helping people who are struggling to feel that, as is going into these protests and these mobs. And they're not all mobs. Some of them are protests. Some of them are legitimate protests, and some of them are just straight up mobs. But we have such big hearts. We're capable of so much love. And I think when we don't put that out there and we don't find people that need that moment of embrace, I think we're missing out, and they're missing out for it. I know that's kind of barely an answer. I don't think there's an easy answer to your question, honestly. It's hard, but there's good organizations out there.
You're not the politician. You don't have to have the perfect answer for every question. Thank God for you. You touch on one. Well, you touch on God. I'm going to rewatch this because listening to you and Arthur make me think more and further into my ethos of what I believe is correct. And it's not even that you're changing what I think, but you're allowing me to dig deeper into what I believe. And it's so empowering. But you mentioned something about rallies. This is something that I've thought from the very beginning. We have such an energy of people that will show up to a political rally, and then the next day they go back to work and don't do anything about it. And that's what got me involved in politics, was being pissed off and going to a rally and then being like, well, now what? So I just, no matter what the issue is in your life that you're facing, that you have a stance on politically, homelessness, whatever the case, right? I just encourage people to step outside their comfort zone and look into ways that they can help people. And if you don't know what that is for you, call a friend. Talk to somebody about how you love people, how you like to serve, what you're good at. And there's so many ways that we can help and empower one another that is so much more important than, pounding our fist at whoever's pissing us off at the rally that we're at.
Yeah, I learned a tremendous amount from Arthur, and I have increasingly, I think for a lot of people who see themselves as libertarians, or classical liberals, and I think classical liberal is the most important term in a lot of ways. It taps into the deepest of the tradition, but it's one and the same. I think we often come into the economics door, and from my own personal evolution as a libertarian, it's been about expanding back out from that hardcore of economics to the psychology and the community and the things that are in this free society, this society of peace and trade and exchange and mutual benefit and mutual aid, that I feel like I've rounded out my philosophy. And I don't think it's as easy as, well, incentives matter. I mean, just, the best way to not have homeless is make sure that we don't have policies that incentivize more homelessness, like giving them free stuff. It's like, it's not that that's not true. It is true. When you incentivize something, you get more of it. If you start giving away free tents, you're going to have more people living in tents.
Anytime you invest in something, you're likely to get more of it, and that's the objective.
True. So that's true, and there are people who need some kind of intervention from someone to help them escape death and disaster. So I see there's a question here. How would you argue the U.S. and other world leaders ought to spread wealth to the third world nations so that they don't get completely left behind? So there's a great documentary called Poverty Inc. that I'll just steal from its insights and say that we as the first world nations have shoveled trillions of dollars into the hands of corrupt governments in the third world, and it's accomplished almost nothing. If you want to lift people up, you don't lift them up. You break down the barriers that stand in the way of them achieving their own uplift. And that is not to say that there's nothing that can be done positively to help another person, but we spend all this time talking about how we're going to send people money. I optioned the rights to a book called The Idealist about a failed program by the economist Jeffrey Sachs to centrally plan and bring in hundreds of millions of dollars to 5 African villages in the hope of jumpstarting their economic growth. You need, in these cases, to get these tyrannical governments out of people's way. Africa in particular, but in much of the quote unquote third world, have some of the most repressive and socialist governments, or the like sort of drunken hangover of socialist governments that are basically just sort of an oligarchic, corrupt hellscape government. You can imagine the man that lit himself on fire in Tunisia, that launched the kind of mostly failed Arab Spring, was a entrepreneur who had a cart and the cops stole his cart. This was government destruction of the basic means of building a life for yourself. So I wish we could have the kind of energy that like Live Aid and all the rest of these things have towards encouraging freedom and encouraging good institutions and encouraging better rules of the game and better government, and stop funding horrible dictators and keeping them in power by sending them money. Yeah. Like the Castro family's got almost $1 billion of wealth. The Chavez's daughter is one of the richest people in Venezuela. Like this is what these people do. They're grifters. They're engines of theft, and we shouldn't give them any power. We should take that power away, or we should just leave them alone. Let these people have the chance to explore
fight for
their
themselves.
And not just to fight for themselves, but we just, this sense in which, again, like, and this is germane to the film, the sense in which this sort of experts in lab coats that have never lived in these communities or know anything about their culture can just go over and say, I know, every one of you should have a chicken. That's kind of the Bill Gates mentality. If every person in Africa was given a chicken, it could transform Africa. It's like, well, or maybe it would totally crush all the people who actually chicken farm and then cause God knows what other kinds of disease, like the unintended consequences that spill over from these sort of harebrained engineer ideas of engineering society. It's just not the way. I mean, Singapore and Hong Kong and even the United States, every place that is currently rich at one point was just dirt poor. If you go back in the U.S. just 100 years, we look like India. We look like Dharavi. And that's in the movie, and it's true. The rich places, whether it's the U.S. or Britain or Denmark, they were dirt poor, peasant farmed places with 95% of people working subsistence farming and most of their kids dying of disease. So, we got to find our own way. That's the way it works. There's no getting around it. There's no shortchanging it. There's no spark plug jump start thing that you can do. I wish there was. We tried them all. They don't work.
We've had a lot of different systems trying to figure it out, and none of them have done more though than what America has with our freedom mentality, and it's because our founding fathers, while imperfect even back then, they debated these things for months and months and months, and took their vast amounts of knowledge and diverse experiences, lawyers to farmers, right, who are our founding fathers, and came up with this idea of constitutional freedoms of how government's supposed to allow us to be free versus the other way around of telling us what we can and can't do. And so while there is no perfect system, we have figured it out as much as I think anybody else in the world ever has. It's just, how do we make it better at this point?
I mean, I think we're at a very important crossroads right now. And the thing that worries me is that inside of some of the movements that are gaining strength and taking to the streets, there's a germ of anti-progress, anti-civilization even. This is and I don't know, I've been grappling with this a lot lately in I think like we all are. But I think if you come to believe that the entire nature of reality, and this is truly a Marxist worldview, is nothing more than a power game, a zero-sum fight. It's like playing King of the Hill. Only one can be on top. And so white males were on top, and they need to be knocked down so that people of color can be on top, or whatever. The people will say whatever, they'll put somebody on top and say we got to knock those people down. Mm-hmm. That zero-sum mentality and it's when it combines with like identity politics and like this sort of victimhood, almost victimhood like religion, I think is like a path to hell, because what you're telling people is something that's fundamentally false, and it's simply easily mathematically provable that it's false. There are more shockingly rich people on Earth today than the entire human population just 250 years ago. Like, if you take the population of the Earth 250 years ago, and take the top of our standard of living today, they're all living a life that people 250 years ago couldn't even begin to fathom. So the idea that there's a top that we're climbing on and we got to knock somebody off to let somebody else go, that's just not the way it works. Each of us has the potential to become unbelievable creative beings that can manifest the reality we want for ourselves, if we don't have excessive barriers in our way, and if we don't have somebody, and I hate to say this, but kneeling on our neck.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people in some communities, that can literally be the police, as we've seen. But you know, and it's not figurative in that case, and that is an absolute tragedy. But for a lot more people, it comes in a lot of different forms that isn't quite so obvious, but is just as damaging to their lives and their families and their communities, whether it's mass incarceration or the sort of maze of things that stand in the way of poor people building a life for themselves. Minimum wage laws, you know, licensing requirements where it takes more to become a hair braider than to learn to get your pilot's license in many states. I mean, this stuff is it's all like a protectionist racket. It's racketeering. And I feel like there's an opportunity. We can either like be the sensible center can come together, left and right, and then whatever can, and say, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff we can actually agree on to improve the country, and barriers to opportunity we can agree to pull down. We don't need to pull down statues of George Washington. There's better stuff to pull down than that. But if we can't find a way to rise our voices and take action above the wacky, crazy fringes, they will win. And that's the thing that scares me the most. And I'm an optimist. It scares me because when you look through history, countries have been overtaken by revolutions from a minority of the population generally. The Bolsheviks were a tiny percentage of the population. The Nazis were a tiny percentage of the population. Even the American Revolutionary, that was not a majority of the colonists. The majority, they didn't have 51% or more of the colonists saying, yeah, let's potentially throw away our livelihoods and say flip the bird to the crown. Like, most people were like, please just don't quarter troops in my house. Leave me alone. I'll be fine. Okay, I'll pay the tea tax. Fine, leave me alone. And I don't know what the answer is to that, because I think that social media and has unleashed a lot of interesting good things like this conversation that we're able to have, but it's also supercharged the wacky fringe, the sort of critical theory woke Maoists on one side and the like proto-Nazi whack jobs on the right who are trying to say that we need to close the borders and that even though we're a nation of immigrants, that they're all bad and we don't need any. We're full. It's like anybody that says this country's full doesn't know anything about America. I've been to all but 6 states in this country.
There's lots of room.
We ain't full.
There's lots of resources.
There's a lot of room. We could have a lot more cities. We could have 30 million person cities just like China, and it would be awesome. We got plenty of space for that. And frankly, the only way we maintain some of these welfare programs we've got is if we have a lot more people. So there's a rational middle that gets silenced by the crazies on the right and the left and the up and the down. And we gotta find a way to. I think that's what a libertarian really is a sort of rational central person. We're in the center.
Yeah. Well, John, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I look forward to chatting with you down the road again. I think that's our time here. We've been on it's about an hour 45. John, you have been a delight. I appreciate this. If anybody has any other questions for John, make sure to let me know. I'll pass them along, and John might be able to reach back out to you or something.
All right, Anthony, thanks for having me on, and thanks to everybody who took the time to participate and watch the film and ask questions. And we might not have gotten to all of them in our wacky ranting together, but I appreciate it very much.
Awesome. Well, you guys all have a great night. Tell all your friends, August 4th primary, vote Welty for Washington, and we'll see you on the campaign trail. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.